The great blanket of night lay across all the countryside around Moss Mill. And apart from a fitful moon which looked down occasionally between passing clouds, the only light came from the mill itself, reflecting on the calm, dark waters of the pool. A wood dog howled in the distance, and at the poolside, tiny pinpoints of light, like so many twinkling stars, told of the small creatures who were up and about under cover of darkness. Yet none had witnessed the tragedy at the mighty wheel. This was the monster into whose threshing arms Baldmoney and Sneezewort had been drawn, which had held them for a second, then hurled them downwards into the deep, cold water below. The gnomes would undoubtedly have perished had it not been for their bundles of possession. Each had held on tightly to the assortment of clothing and stores wrapped tightly about with moleskin. And this had saved them, for the air trapped inside brought them back buoyantly to the surface. Baldmoney lay floating on his back in the water, greedily gulping in the cool night air. How glorious it was, how fresh, how sweet, how pure. Only seconds before, with his lungs near to bursting, he had thought death was upon him. Now he was drifting with the current, not bothering where it was taking him, merely thankful that he was still alive. After several minutes, a gentle bump told him that he'd been washed ashore, and he found himself sitting in the water beside a small beach. He sat for a moment, wondering what to do next. He felt cold now, right through his body. He started to shiver, his teeth chattered, and... what was that? It sounded like a twig snapping. There it was again. Was it a fox? Or maybe a stoat? Then came the footsteps. He crouched low, ready to push off into the stream once more, as the footsteps came nearer. Hesitating footsteps. The footsteps of a hunter? Then, suddenly, he realized what it was. Baldmoney knew there was only one creature who could sneeze like that. Who else but Sneezewort? And he started to chuckle, and the chuckle became a mighty laugh. Baldmoney! Baldmoney! Is that you? Called Sneezewort from the beach. Is that you?
Of course it is, Sneezewort. Of course it is. Who else could it be?
And so the two gnomes met up once more. But they were now faced with so many problems. They had no boat, no food. Should they go home and lose face, or continue with the expedition, and if so, how? But the most pressing needs were warmth and sleep. Everything else they would consider in the morning. So, moving along the beach, they found a way through to a field beyond, where stood a large and friendly haystack. Here they burrowed deep into the sweet-smelling hay and fell into a warm and restful sleep. It was very early the next morning, and the sun was beginning to pierce the river mists. There was all the promise of a glorious day, and as it grew lighter, the bird chorus increased in volume as if to help dispel the chill of early morning. But far from being a part of this scene, old Dodder found himself looking down on it from a great height, because for the first time in his long life, he was flying. It was quite simple, really. Earlier that morning, he'd come across his friend the heron, who'd offered him a lift as far as Moss Mill so that he could catch up quickly with the others. In fact, old Dodder was quite terrified. It was just like being in a gale as he hung on to his possessions with one hand and a handful of feathers with the other. Below him, the folly that he knew and loved, the familiar fields and the oak pool, had all disappeared, for he was flying upstream now to countryside that was unknown and mysterious. "We're going down now," called the heron as he started a graceful glide towards the stream. But Dodder couldn't bear to watch. He shut his eyes and hoped for the best. "Landing now, hold tight!" But it took Dodder completely by surprise. "Oh! Oh! Are you all right, old boy?" asked the heron. Yes, I think so," answered Dodder. "It's just that I wasn't prepared for that." "Well, I think I'd better leave you now. We're a bit too near the mill for my liking, and I know that miller. He'd shoot me if he could." So without waiting for Dodder's gasping thanks, the heron spread his wings and sailed away. Dodder paused for a moment to recover his wits. Then he moved to the water's edge. He could hear the hum of the mill in the background, hear the roar of water passing down the beat. The current here was certainly moving faster than at the oak pool. The stream also appeared wider, and what was that? On the opposite side of the stream, a fence came down into the water with strands of rusty barbed wire coiled from post to post. And there, caught in the wire and jammed tight, was a boat. But not just any boat. It was the Dragonfly. Dodder stared hard at the boat. Obviously, something dreadful had happened. Some great creature had upset the boat. Baldmoney and Sneezewort had drowned, and he was destined to live alone for the rest of his life. Poor old Dodder. He simply broke down and wept. How ironic it was that even as Dodder wept for them, Baldmoney and Sneezewort were in the process of collecting their breakfast. The old Frisian cow lying in the meadow couldn't quite see to her tummy, but something was definitely tickling her. Still, she was half asleep and wasn't that bothered, which was lucky for Baldmoney and Sneezewort, for between them they were filling a mussel shell with her milk. Working away under the huge dome of the udder, the side of the recumbent cow was like a mountain against the sky, and they prayed she'd not move, for it might well crush them. Then, at last, the shell was full. The gnomes grinned at each other and carefully carried the milk back to the haystack. With the rich, warm liquid inside them, they now felt quite refreshed, and they could see from the early sun that this was going to be a warm day. Already they had decided that come what may, they must continue with the expedition. The very bundles that had saved their lives in the river also held spare fishing lines, clothing and knives. And as Baldmoney had remarked, they couldn't run for home at the first obstacle. They had to push on for Crow Wood in their search for Cloudberry. The gnomes made good progress upstream that day. The sun shone brightly, and the gentle breeze scattered white hawthorn petals over the grass and bushes. The crab trees, too, were shedding their pink blossoms. Some fell on the bank, others in the stream where they caught in small whirlpools and eddies and spun round in sparkling circles. On they journeyed, through meadows of golden buttercups, through hayfields not yet cut, and full of all manner of flowers. And now and again they caught the smell of new cut grass, torn from the fields by contented grazing cows. It was late in the afternoon that the two gnomes stood close to the water, looking for a good place to fish for minnows. "Anywhere here should be all right," said Baldmoney. "You get the lines out and..." He stopped short, his mouth agape. "Sneezewort! Look!" Sneezewort turned, and a look of horror came over his face. For there, looking down at them from the bank, was their most dreaded enemy, Stoat. They saw every detail clearly. The cruel flat head, the beady eyes, the sharp muzzle, and the needle-like whiskers. Slowly, the two gnomes drew their knives and waited. But what could they do? Where could they run to? With the stream behind them, it seemed they were trapped, and the stoat was about to spring.